What's up, everybody? Hello and welcome to Not Your Average Meta, an MTG Commander channel dedicated to bringing you decks and commanders you wouldn't normally find in your average meta. This week's video is brought to you by our new channel sponsor, International MTG. If you're looking for competitive pricing on your favorite MTG cards, old and new, be sure to check out the International MTG store and TCG Player, link in the description of this video. As well as our second channel sponsor, the Hobby Horse in Taylorville, Illinois. If you're ever in town, be sure to stop in and say hi to Martin. On this week's episode of Not Your Average Meta, we're bringing you another game we filmed on at the Hobby Horse featuring a first-time appearance this season by Eric. This week's matchup features Eric playing his Valduk, Keeper of the Flame equipment deck, Ryan returning with Raphael, Fiendish Savior from Baldur's Gate, Fallgirl playing his Jor Kadeen first Goldwarden deck, and finally Patrick playing the other commander from the Tinkertime Precon, Rashmi and Ragavan. Now that we have our fighters, let's step into the Thunderdome and see which deck will come out on top. Turn 1, Ryan plays a Swamp. Fog plays a Mountain, and Patrick plays a tapped Temple of Abandon, scrying a card, keeping it on top of his library. Eric plays a Mountain and then pays 1 for a Relic of Progenitus, passing turn. Ryan plays a Mountain and Fog plays a Plains, then taps out in order to cast his commander, Jor Kadeen. Patrick plays a tapped Cinder Glade, while Eric plays an Ancient Tomb for turn before casting a Mox Opal. He then pays 3, losing 2 life to his tomb in order to cast a Sword of Light and Shadow. Ryan plays a Mountain for turn and then casts Zurzoth Chaos Rider. Fog plays a tapped Windscarred Crag for turn, gaining a life, before he then casts a Barbed Spike. He then goes to combat and swings his commander, Eric, for 3 commander damage before passing his turn. Patrick plays an Island for turn and then casts a Tireless Provisioner. Eric plays a Ghost Quarter for turn before paying 3, losing 2 life in order to cast his commander, Valduk. He then pays to equip a sword to his commander before going to combat. This then creates him a 3/1 elemental token, which he chooses to swing at Patrick for 3 damage, before the token then gets exiled on his end step. Ryan plays another Swamp for turn before he then goes to combat swinging Zurzoth at Fog. Fog then takes a damage and they both draw a card before randomly discarding a card from their hands. Ryan then creates a 1/1 Devil token before paying 3 to cast an Embodiment of Agnes. In response, Eric taps his Relic to exile the only card in Ryan's graveyard, which makes his Embodiment come into play as a 0/0, thus going to the graveyard. Fog draws for turn and then pays 1 for Bloodforged Battle Axe before then paying 2 in order to equip it to his commander. He then goes to combat swinging his commander at Ryan, which then triggers Jor Kadeen, having him draw a card while Ryan takes 6 commander damage. Fog then creates a copy of his axe and passes turn. Patrick plays a Force for turn, which triggers his Provisioner, creating him a treasure token, before he then taps out in order to cast his commander, Rashmi and Ragavan. He then sacks his 1 treasure in order to cast a Gilded Goose, which comes into play, creating him a food token. Eric plays a Mycosynth Gardens for turn before going to combat, creating another 3/1 elemental. He then swings Valduk at Ryan while he swings the elemental at Fog. Before damage is dealt, he then flashes in an Embercleave, attaching it to his commander, which then has Ryan taking 12 commander damage while Fog takes his 3 damage from the elemental. Second main, he uses his Relic to exile a card from Ryan's graveyard, and then Ryan plays a Mountain for turn before Eric remembers he should have been gaining 6 life. Ryan then taps out in order to cast his commander Raphael, before then going to combat, once again swinging Zurzoth at Fog. They both then once again draw a card before discarding a card from their hand randomly. Fog then plays a Plains for turn and casts a Prosperous Partnership, creating 2 1/1 green citizen tokens when it enters play. He then goes to combat swinging Jor Kadeen at Eric for 6 commander damage, which has him drawing a card and then creating another Battle Axe after damage is dealt. Patrick draws for turn and then casts a Tireless Tracker, which triggers his commander, creating him a treasure token and has him choosing Eric as his target. Eric then exiles an Umazawa's Jitte off the top of his library, which Patrick then decides to cast for free. Patrick then casts a Simic Growth Chamber as his land for turn, choosing to bounce his temple back to his hand. This then creates him another treasure token as well as a clue token. Eric draws and then casts a Sword of Fire and Ice before paying to equip it to his commander. He then casts a Red Elemental Blast in order to destroy Patrick's commander, before then going to combat, choosing to swing his commander at Fog while he swings his 3 elemental tokens at Patrick. Fog then takes 16 commander damage while Eric gains 6 more life, and targets 2 of Patrick's creatures with the Swords trigger. In response, Patrick cracks a clue to make his Tireless Tracker 1 toughness bigger, and the other creature then gets destroyed. Eric then chooses to exile another card from Ryan's graveyard and passes. Ryan draws and then casts a Chaos Warp, targeting 1 of Eric's swords. Eric then shuffles his Sword of Fire and Ice into his library and reveals the top card of his library, which is a Sword of the Animus, which comes into play. Ryan then goes to combat, swinging out with all of his creatures to Eric, which has him losing 11 life, while Ryan then gains life. This then has both of them then drawing a card and discarding a card randomly from their hands, while Ryan creates a Devil token. On his instep, Fog taps 3 creatures in order to create a treasure token. Fog plays a tapped Autonomous Furnace for turn before he then goes to combat, once again swinging his commander at Ryan, which has him drawing a card while Ryan takes 6 more commander damage. He then creates a 4th Battle Axe before tapping 3 more creatures in order to create another treasure token. Fog then pays 4 in order to cast a Chain Reaction. He pays 1 to cast Lorn's Escape, targeting his commander, which makes it indestructible while the rest of the board gets wiped, and he scries 1 card to the bottom of his library. Patrick draws for turn and then plays a turn 6 Soul Ring before paying to cast his commander a 2nd time. He then replays his Temple as his land for turn, which has him scrying a card to the bottom of his library. Eric plays a Mount for turn before he then casts a Tear of the Peaks. He then exiles another card from Ryan's graveyard before he then pays to equip his dragon with the Sword of Light and Shadow. Ryan draws and plays a Mana Crypt for turn before then paying 4 to cast a Foul Renewal. He then returns a creature from his graveyard to his hand and uses the trigger to target the Tear of the Peaks in order to destroy it. Fog plays another Mountain for turn and then casts Zerd of the Dawnwaker before we all realize the Terror had protection from black, which then has Eric's dragon coming back into play, and we allow Ryan to choose a new target, which has him choosing Rashmi and Ragavan. Fog then casts an Auroch Still Shaper before paying 1 to equip it with one of his battle axes, and then paying an additional 1 to equip Zerda with another one of his battle axes. He then goes to combat and swings his commander at Ryan once again, this time for 7 damage, which has him drawing a card. Patrick plays an island for turn and then pays enough to cast Rashmi and Ragavan a 3rd time. Eric plays another Mountain for turn before paying to cast the Sword of Forge and Frontier and then paying to equip it to his dragon. He then pays to also equip the Embercleave to his dragon before he then goes to combat, swinging at Fog, taking him out of the game. He then gains 6 life from damage being dealt and returns a creature card from his graveyard to his hand before he then exiles the top 4 cards of his library. Eric then plays another land for turn before paying 1 to cast a Leather Armor and then paying to equip it to his dragon for free. Ryan wins his Mana Crypt roll on his upkeep and then draws for turn. He then plays a Nykthos Shrine to Nyx for turn before then tapping out in order to cast Archfiend of Despair. Patrick draws and then casts a Simic Signet, which then triggers his commander, having Eric exile the top card of his library. He then can't cast it, so Eric keeps it in exile before he then pays 4 in order to cast a Whirler Rogue, which creates him 2 1/1 colorless Thopter tokens when it enters play. Patrick then casts a Sand Steep War Riders and passes. Eric draws for turn and then plays another Mountain. He then goes straight to combat, swinging his dragon in the air at Ryan, taking him out of the game. This then has him gaining 6 life and then exiling the top 4 cards of his library. Eric then plays another Mountain before he then pays 1 to cast his own Bloodforge Battle Axe. He then casts a Valakut Awakening, which has him bottoming his hand and drawing 3 new cards. He then finally casts a Blackblade Reforged and a Treacherous Ogre before passing turn. Patrick draws for turn and then realizes he's dead to the dragon, so he scoops the game up to Eric. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you can see more games and decks you wouldn't normally see in your average meta.